Hey guys, tonight we're going to slow things down and sit with a story that matters. Marcus Tate, a black Marine in his early 50s, carries the weight of a life shaped by service and sacrifice. He's in Ohio at his daughter's high school graduation, his uniform crisp, his heart full. But prejudice doesn't care about medals or pride. It creeps in quiet and cruel, threatening to steal his moment. Before we begin, please like the video and subscribe, but only if stories like this truly move you. Comment your city, yo, and the time you're watching. Now close your eyes, or don't, it's your choice. Either way, you're about to witness something real. The gym at Westfield High in Dayton, Ohio hums with life on a warm June evening in 2025. Folding chairs scrape against the polished floor, and the air carries the faint sweetness of concession. Popcorn mingled with the sharp tang of floor wax. Banners in crimson and gold drape the walls, proclaiming Class of 2025 in bold letters that catch the fluorescent light. Parents clutch programs, their faces a mix of exhaustion and joy, while siblings fidget tugging at collared shirts. The bleachers groan under the weight of extended families, some waving homemade signs, others snapping photos with phones that glint in the dim glow. It's a scene stitched into the fabric of American suburbia, hopeful, chaotic, alive. Marcus Tate sits in the third row left side family seating. His marine dress blues are immaculate, the deep navy fabric pressed to a razor's edge, his medals gleaming softly against his chest. At 52, his face is weathered lines etched around his eyes, like a map of years spent in deserts and barracks. But his posture is unyielding, shoulders squared, spine straight. He's driven 6 hours from Pittsburgh, the hum of his old Ford pickup still lingering in his bones. His daughter Lena is graduating tonight, and nothing, not distance, not fatigue, could keep him from this moment. In his jacket pocket, a faded photo of Lena at 5, her gap-toothed grin framed by pigtails presses against his heart. It's his talisman, a tether to the promises he's kept since her mother passed a decade ago. Marcus scans the gym, his gaze steady but not searching. He notices the small things: a grandmother adjusting her glasses, a father loosening his tie, a teenage boy sneaking a vape in the back row. He doesn't linger on the glances that come his way, some curious, some guarded. He's been a black man in uniform too long to misread the weight of certain stares. A woman in a floral dress 2 rows over offers a quick smile, then whispers to her husband. Marcus doesn't react. His focus narrows to the stage where students in red gowns line up, their faces a blend of nerves and pride. Lena's there somewhere in the middle, her mother's eyes shining through the crowd. The national anthem begins and the gym rises as one. Marcus stands, his movements precise, his hand resting at his side. He doesn't need to place it over his heart. His presence is reverence enough. As the final notes fade, the crowd settles, but a ripple of movement catches his eye. 2 security guards weave through the aisle, their black polo shirts emblazoned with Summit Security in white thread. The shorter one, broad-shouldered with a buzz cut, moves with a swagger that doesn't match his youth. The taller one, lean and restless, chews gum with a rhythm that betrays his unease. They're heading straight for Marcus. "Excuse me, sir," the shorter guard says, his voice low but sharp, like a blade wrapped in velvet. His badge reads C. Tanner. He leans in close enough for Marcus to smell the mint on his breath. This section's reserved for family. Marcus turns his head slowly, his eyes meeting Tanner's. "I'm family," he says, his voice steady, deep, the kind that carries without rising. He reaches into his jacket, pulls out a printed ticket, and holds it up. "3rd row left. Confirmed." Tanner doesn't glance at the ticket. His lips twitch, a half smirk that doesn't reach his eyes. "Yeah, well, we got word it's full up front. There's seats in the back." The taller guard badge, reading J. Reese, shifts his weight, his gum chewing slowing. "No big deal, man. Just move back. Keep it easy." Marcus's fingers tighten around the ticket, but his face remains still, a lake, undisturbed by wind. "I drove 6 hours to see my daughter walk that stage," he says. "I'm staying right here." A few heads turn. A man in a polo shirt nudges his wife, their whispers like static in the air. A woman beside Marcus, older, with silver hair pinned neatly, leans closer. "You don't need to move," she murmurs, her voice firm but quiet. Marcus gives her a slight nod, his eyes never leaving the guards. Tanner straightens his hand, brushing the radio on his hip. "Look, don't make this a thing," he says louder now, drawing more eyes. "Back row's fine. You'll still see her." Marcus doesn't blink. "You're not hearing me," he says, his tone lower, firmer, like a warning carved in stone. "I'm not moving." The air shifts, heavy with the weight of unspoken things. Reese glances at Tanner, his unease growing, but Tanner's smirk hardens. He steps closer, his shadow falling across Marcus's uniform. You think that uniform means you get special treatment, he says, his voice dripping with something older, uglier. Marcus's jaw tightens, but he doesn't rise. He's faced worse sandstorms, gunfire, the slow grind of loss. This is just another moment, another test. But in his chest, the photo of Lena presses harder, a reminder of why he's here. Some truths linger, waiting to be unveiled. The gym hums on, oblivious to the storm brewing in the third row. Students adjust their caps. Parents snap photos, but the space around Marcus feels charged like the air before lightning. A boy in the bleachers tilts his phone, maybe recording, maybe not. The woman beside Marcus grips her program tighter, her knuckles pale. Tanner's radio crackles, and he mutters something into it, his eyes locked on Marcus. Reese shifts again, his gum chewing now a nervous tick. Marcus sits still, his hands resting on his thighs, his gaze returning to the stage. He's not here for a fight, not here to prove a point. He's here for Lena, for the promise he made when she was 5, when he swore she'd never walk alone. But the guards don't move, their presence a challenge, a line drawn in the sand. The crowd's murmurs grow a low hum of curiosity and unease. Something's coming, something bigger than this moment, and Marcus feels it in the way the air holds its breath. Across the gym in the bleacher's shadow, a man stands slowly. He's broad, his flannel shirt stretched across his shoulders, his face unreadable. He doesn't speak, doesn't gesture, just watches. Marcus doesn't look back, but he knows the stance, the stillness. It's familiar, like a memory etched in muscle and bone. The man sits again, but his eyes don't waver. Others are watching too, waiting as the gym's noise fades into a distant hum. Marcus's heart beats steady, a drum that's never faltered. Whatever comes next, he's ready. The stage lights flicker, and the principal steps to the podium, her voice cutting through the tension. "Let's begin," she says, and the crowd claps, but it's hollow, distracted. Marcus's eyes find Lena in the lineup, her red gown catching the light. She's tall like her mother, her movements graceful but grounded. He can't see her face, but he knows her smile, knows the way her eyes crinkle when she's proud. This is her moment, and no one, not Tanner, not Reese, not the weight of old prejudices, will take it from him. The gym at Westfield High pulses with restless energy, the hum of anticipation now laced with unease. Crimson and gold banners flutter faintly above their edges, frayed from years of ceremonies, catching the harsh glow of fluorescent lights. The polished floor reflects the crowd's shifting shadows, a mosaic of families in button-ups and sundresses, their programs crinkling as they lean forward, sensing the brewing storm in the third row. The air is thick with the scent of spilled coffee and the faint musk of anticipation, a small-town Ohio evening stretched taut by unspoken truths. Marcus Tate sits like a pillar in his marine dress blues, his weathered hands steady on his thighs, the faded photo of Lena in his pocket, a quiet anchor against the rising tide of confrontation. The two security guards, Tanner and Reese, linger near Marcus, their presence a persistent thorn. Tanner, the shorter one, adjusts his radio with a deliberate slowness, his buzz-cut head tilted as if measuring Marcus's resolve. His eyes carry a glint of challenge, the kind that thrives on control, on making others shrink. Reese, lanky and less certain, chews his gum faster now, his badge glinting as he shifts from foot to foot. Their black polo shirts, emblazoned with Summit security, seem to tighten around them, as if the fabric senses the weight of their misstep. The crowd nearby grows quieter, their murmurs a low current beneath the principal's voice droning through names at the podium. "Sir, I'm not asking again," Tanner says, his voice sharper now, slicing through the gym's hum. He steps closer, his boots scuffing the floor, close enough that Marcus can see the faint sweat on his brow. "Move to the back, or we'll have to escort you out." Marcus's gaze lifts slow and deliberate, meeting Tanner's with a calm that feels like steel. "You're making a mistake," he says, his voice low, each word measured, carrying the weight of a man who's faced worse than petty power plays. "I'm here for my daughter. That's all you need to know." Reese glances at Tanner, his gum-chewing faltering. "Come on, man, he starts. But Tanner cuts him off with a raised hand, his smirk twisting into something harder. "You heard me," Tanner says to Marcus. "This ain't your seat. Don't make it ugly." The words land like a spark in dry grass. A woman 2 rows back gasps softly, her hand clutching her husband's arm. The silver-haired woman beside Marcus, her program now creased from gripping him, leans forward. "Leave him be," she says, her voice trembling, but firm like a teacher scolding a wayward student. Marcus doesn't acknowledge her, but her words ripple, drawing more eyes. A teenager in the bleachers tilts his phone higher, the lens catching the scene. The gym's energy shifts the crowd's attention, splitting between the stage and the standoff. Marcus's fingers brush the edge of his ticket, still in his hand, its corners soft from handling. He doesn't raise it again, there's no point. Tanner's not interested in proof, only in winning. Marcus knows this game has played it in boardrooms, on bases, in quiet southern towns, where his uniform meant less than his skin. His jaw tightens, but his face remains a mask of calm, his eyes fixed on the stage where Lena stands among her classmates, her red gown a beacon in the sea of caps. She hasn't seen him yet, hasn't noticed the guards, and Marcus intends to keep it that way. This is her night, her triumph. He won't let it be tainted. You think you're special, don't you? Tanner says, his voice dropping to a hiss meant for Marcus alone. That uniform doesn't mean what you think it does here. The words carry an old venom one Marcus has heard in different forms on deployment in civilian life, in the slow, sidelong glances of strangers. It's not just about the seat. It's about who gets to belong, who gets to be seen. Marcus's breath steadies a slow inhale that anchors him. Walk away, he says, his tone so low it's almost a whisper, but it carries a warning like the rumble before a storm. You don't know what you're starting. Tanner's smirk falters for a split second, but he doubles down, stepping so close his knee brushes Marcus's chair. Last chance, he says, his hand hovering near his radio fingers, twitching with the urge to escalate. Reese shifts again, his eyes darting to the crowd where more heads are turning, more whispers spreading. A man in a polo shirt stands arms crossed, watching silently from the fifth row. His stance is familiar, broad, steady, like a soldier waiting for a signal. Marcus doesn't look back, but he feels it, the weight of eyes that know more than they say. Some truths linger, waiting to be unveiled. Marcus's mind drifts just for a moment to a night in Iraq 2009 under a sky heavy with dust. He'd led a squad through chaos, pulling men from a burning Humvee, their faces blackened, their breaths ragged. Those men, his brothers, had looked at him then with the same quiet trust he feels now somewhere in this gym. He blinks, the memory fading, but the feeling stays a steady pulse beneath his calm. The principal's voice cracks through the tension, calling another name. The crowd claps, but it's scattered, distracted. Lena's closer to the stage, now her gown swaying as she adjusts her cap. Marcus's heart tightens, not with fear, but with purpose. He thinks of the photo in his pocket, Lena's tiny hand clutching his finger all those years ago. He'd promised her mother he'd be here, promised Lena she'd never face the world alone. Tanner's words, his sneers, are nothing compared to that vow. You're causing a scene, Reese says, his voice softer, almost pleading. He's younger, maybe mid-20s, and the crack in his tone betrays his doubt. Just move and we're done. Marcus doesn't answer. He sits unyielding, his hands still, his eyes on the stage. The woman beside him shifts her program, now folded into a tight square. This is wrong, she says louder this time, drawing a nod from a man across the aisle. The crowd's murmurs grow a low hum of indignation, but Tanner doesn't budge. His radio crackles again, and he speaks into it, his words too quiet to catch. Reese's gum chewing stops entirely, his eyes flicking to the bleachers where another man stands, his flannel shirt taut across his shoulders, his gaze sharp and unwavering. The gym feels smaller now, the walls closing in as the standoff stretches. The stage lights flicker, casting long shadows that dance across the floor. Lena's name is closer, maybe 10 students away, and Marcus's focus narrows to her, to the moment he's here for. But Tanner's presence is a weight, a challenge that won't fade. The crowd's eyes are on them, now not the stage, and the air hums with the promise of something bigger, something waiting to break free. Marcus's fingers brush the photo in his pocket, a reflex, a reminder. He's not here to fight, not here to prove himself to men like Tanner. He's here for Lena, for the life he's built, despite the world's sharp edges. But the guards' refusal to leave, their insistence on control, stirs something deep in him, not anger, but a quiet resolve, the kind that's carried him through wars and grief. The man in the bleachers sits again, but his eyes don't waver, and Marcus knows without looking that he's not alone. The gym holds its breath, waiting for the next move, and Marcus sits steady as stone, ready for whatever comes. The gym at Westfield High feels like a held breath, its crimson and gold banners sagging under the weight of tension. The fluorescent lights hum, casting stark shadows across the polished floor, where folding chairs creak as families shift their eyes, darting between the stage and the third row. The air is heavy with the fading sweetness of popcorn, and the sharp edge of unease, a small-town Ohio evening teetering on the brink of something unspoken. Marcus Tate remains a pillar in his marine dress blues, his weathered hands resting on his thighs, the photo of Lena in his pocket, a quiet pulse against his heart. The crowd's murmurs weave a tight web, and the stage where students in red gowns wait feels distant, almost secondary. Tanner and Reese, the security guards, haven't retreated. Tanner, with his buzz-cut swagger, stands too close, his radio crackling like a warning. His eyes narrow, his smirk gone replaced by a hard line that betrays his frustration. Reese, lanky and restless, shifts his weight, his gum, abandoned his badge glinting as he glances nervously at the growing audience. Their black polo shirts marked Summit Security seem to cling tighter, as if sensing the moment's gravity. The principal's voice calling names at the podium is a faint echo drowned by the standoff's pull. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," Tanner says, his voice low but edged with venom, meant to sting. He leans in his boots, scuffing the floor, his shadow falling across Marcus's uniform. "Get up or we're done talking." Marcus's gaze lifts, very slow, unyielding, his eyes locking onto Tanner's, with a calm that cuts deeper than words. "You're not done," he says, his voice a steady rumble like a tide turning. "But you're close." The words carry no threat, only truth, and they land like a stone in still water, rippling through the nearby rows. Reese clears his throat, his voice cracking. "Look, man, we're just doing our job," he says, but the words falter hollow against Marcus's stillness. Tanner shoots him a glance sharp enough to silence him, then turns back to Marcus. "You think you're untouchable," he hisses, his hand twitching toward his radio. "This ain't your base. You don't run things here." The words are a blade slicing at something older, uglier, a prejudice Marcus has faced in countless forms, from whispered slurs to sidelong glances. His jaw tightens, but his face remains a mask, his breath steady. He thinks of Lena, just steps from the stage, her red gown catching the light. She's close now, maybe 5 names away, and he won't let this moment, her moment, be stolen. The photo in his pocket presses harder, a reminder of promises kept through grief and distance. A woman in the 5th row, her sundress bright against the gym's gray stands, abruptly her program falling to the floor. "This is shameful," she says, her voice loud enough to carry trembling with indignation. Her husband tugs at her arm, but she shakes him off, her eyes on Marcus. The silver-haired woman beside him nods, her knuckles white around her folded program. "He's got every right to be here," she says, quieter but firm like a vow. The crowd stirs, whispers spreading like wildfire phones, tilting higher in the bleachers. Marcus doesn't acknowledge the support, but he feels it, a current beneath his calm. His eyes stay on the stage where Lena adjusts her cap, unaware of the storm brewing. He knows this game, knows Tanner's type, knows the power they think they wield. But Marcus has faced worse sandstorms, that blinded nights, that broke men losses, that carved holes no metal could fill. This is just another test, and he sits unyielding, his silence louder than Tanner's taunts. Some truths linger, waiting to be unveiled. Across the gym in the bleacher's shadow, a man rises again. He's broad, his flannel shirt stretched across his shoulders, his face carved with lines that speak of hard years. He doesn't speak, doesn't gesture, but his stance is unmistakable, steady, alert, like a soldier scanning a horizon. Marcus doesn't look back, but he knows the posture, feels it in his bones. It's the same stance he saw in Iraq under a sky choked with dust when he pulled men from fire and chaos. The man sits, but another stands, this one in a dark jacket, his eyes sharp, unblinking. They're scattered, unconnected to the crowd's eyes, but Marcus senses their presence, a quiet promise. Tanner's radio crackles, and he mutters into it, his words clipped, his gaze never leaving Marcus. "We got a situation," he says loud enough for nearby rows to hear. Reese shifts his hands, fidgeting, his unease growing. "Maybe we should," he starts, but Tanner cuts him off. "No," he snaps. "He moves or we move him." The words draw a gasp from the sundress woman, her hand flying to her mouth. A man in a polo shirt standing now crosses his arms, his face tight with disapproval. The gym's energy shifts the crowd's attention fully on the 3rd row, the stage forgotten. The principal's voice falters mid-name, her eyes flicking to the commotion. She adjusts her glasses, whispering to an aide who hurries toward the back, walkie-talkie in hand. The air feels charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. Marcus's fingers brush the photo in his pocket, a reflex that grounds him. He thinks of Lena at 5, her laughter filling their old Pittsburgh apartment, her mother's voice singing softly in the background. He'd promised them both he'd be here, promised Lena she'd never face the world alone. Tanner's words, his posturing, are nothing compared to that vow. But the guards' refusal to back down, their insistence on control, stirs something deeper in Marcus. Not anger, but a resolve forged in fire, tempered by years of carrying burdens others couldn't see. In the bleachers, another man stands, this one older, his gray hair cropped close, his posture rigid. He's in a corner, half hidden by a banner, but his eyes are locked on Marcus, steady and knowing. Marcus doesn't turn, but he feels the weight of those eyes, the same weight he felt in a burning Humvee when he dragged men to safety. Their breaths ragged, their trust absolute. The men are here scattered but present, their silence a language only Marcus understands. The principal calls another name and the crowd claps, but it's thin, distracted. Lena's closer now, her gown swaying as she steps forward, her face bright with pride. Marcus's heart tightens, not with fear, but with purpose. He sits, his hands still, his gaze unwavering. Tanner's hand hovers near his radio, his fingers twitching, his frustration boiling over. Reese glances at the bleachers, his eyes catching the standing men, his unease now a visible tremor. "You're embarrassing yourself," Marcus says, his voice so low it's almost lost in the gym's hum, but it cuts through sharp and final. Tanner's face reddens, his hand dropping to his belt, not a weapon but close enough to feel threatening. The crowd holds its breath, the air thick with anticipation, with the promise of something bigger, something waiting to break free. Marcus sits steady as stone, his silence. A challenge, a shield, a promise kept. The gym at Westfield High is a taut wire, its crimson and gold banners hanging heavy, as if burdened by the moment's weight. Fluorescent lights buzz faintly, casting jagged shadows across the polished floor, where folding chairs groan under restless families. The air is thick, the sweetness of popcorn now sour with tension, a small-town Ohio evening poised on a razor's edge. Marcus Tate sits resolute in his marine dress blues, his weathered hands steady the faded photo of Lena in his pocket, a quiet heartbeat. The crowd's whispers are a low roar, their eyes locked on the third row, the stage a distant afterthought. Tanner and Reese, the security guards, hover like storm clouds. Tanner's buzz-cut head gleams with sweat, his smirk gone, his eyes burning with a mix of anger and desperation. His Summit security polo clings to his broad frame, his radio crackling with static, a lifeline he's clinging to. Reese, lanky and pale, stands a step behind his hands, fidgeting, his badge glinting as he scans the crowd, sensing the shift. The principal's voice calling names is a faint hum drowned by the standoff's gravity. "You're done here," Tanner says, his voice a low growl, each word a jab. He steps closer, his boots scuffing the floor, his shadow swallowing Marcus's uniform. "Stand up or I make you." Marcus's gaze rises slow and unyielding, his eyes meeting Tanner's with a calm that feels like a wall. "You don't have that power," he says, his voice deep, steady, a river carving stone. The words land heavy, silencing the nearby rows. Reese shifts his hands, twitching. Tanner, maybe he starts, but Tanner cuts him off with a glare, his hand dropping to his belt, fingers grazing the radio, a threat unspoken but clear. The crowd stirs, a collective intake of breath. The silver-haired woman beside Marcus grips her chair, her knuckles white. "This is wrong," she says, her voice cracking loud enough to carry. A man in a polo shirt standing now nods, his arms crossed, his face tight. The sundressed woman in the fifth row whispers to her husband, her eyes wide with indignation. Phones tilt higher in the bleachers' lenses, catching the scene, the gym's energy coiling tighter. The principal pauses mid-name, her glasses glinting, as she glances at the commotion, her aide hurrying toward the back, walkie-talkie buzzing. Marcus's fingers brush the photo in his pocket, grounding him. He thinks of Lena now, 3 names from the stage, her red gown a beacon in the crowd. He's here for her, for the promise he made when her mother's laughter still filled their home. Tanner's words, his posturing, are nothing compared to that vow. But the guards' refusal to relent, their insistence on control, ignites a spark in Marcus, not anger, but a resolve forged in fire, tempered by years of carrying burdens others couldn't see. Some truths linger, waiting to be unveiled. Across the gym, the air shifts, a ripple of movement, too deliberate to ignore. A man in a flannel shirt rises from the bleachers, his broad frame casting a long shadow. His face is carved with lines, his eyes sharp, unblinking. He doesn't speak, doesn't gesture, but his stance is a signal, a call answered by another man in a dark jacket standing near the aisle, his posture rigid. A third rises, older, gray hair cropped close, his gaze locked on Marcus. Then a fourth, a fifth, a sixth. 6 men scattered but unified their presence. A silent thunder rolling through the gym. Marcus doesn't look back, but he knows them, feels them in his bones. They're his squad from Iraq 2009, men he pulled from a burning Humvee, their faces blackened, their trust absolute. Creed Javier, Zach Lim Horton Soto, names etched in memory, bound by blood and silence. They stand now, not as soldiers, but as brothers, their eyes steady, their shoulders squared, a wall of loyalty that needs no words. The crowd notices heads turning, whispers dying. The gym feels smaller, the air charged like the moment before lightning strikes. Tanner's hand freezes on his radio, his eyes darting to the standing men. Reese steps back, his face paling, his hands dropping to his sides. Tanner, he mutters, his voice barely a whisper. Who are they? Tanner doesn't answer, his jaw tightening, his confidence cracking. The men don't move, don't speak, but their presence is a rebuke, a force that humbles the guard's arrogance. The silver-haired woman gasps softly, her hand covering her mouth. The polo shirt man nods as if understanding something profound. The sundress woman's husband stands now, his eyes wide, the crowd's energy shifting from tension to awe. You're out of your depth, Marcus says, his voice low, final cutting through the silence. Tanner's face reddens, his hand twitching, but he hesitates, sensing the shift. The principal hurries down the aisle, her heels clicking, her face tight with urgency. Enough, she says, her voice sharp but controlled, directed at Tanner. Back off, now. Her aide follows, walkie-talkie silent, her eyes flicking to the standing men, then to Marcus, a flicker of respect in her gaze. Tanner's shoulders slump, his hand falling from his belt. He steps back, Reese following their retreat, a silent admission of defeat. The crowd exhales a low murmur, spreading phones lowering as the moment sinks in. The guards slink toward the back exit, their heads low, their prejudice laid bare, shame before the gym's watchful eyes. Marcus sits unyielding, his gaze returning to the stage where Lena steps forward, her name called, her smile bright with pride. The crowd erupts, clapping, whistling a wave of sound that feels deliberate, unified. The 6 men, Creed Javier, Zach Lim Horton Soto, raise their hands, their applause a salute, a gesture that says they see Marcus, see Lena, honor them both. Lena walks across the stage, her steps steady, her eyes scanning the crowd until they find Marcus. He meets her gaze, his face softening, the smallest nod passing between them. She shakes the principal's hand, takes her diploma, and steps off, the applause, still ringing, carrying the weight of something real. Marcus leans back in his chair, the photo in his pocket, a quiet pulse. He's not here for triumph, not here to prove a point. He's here for Lena, for the life he's built, despite the world's sharp edges. The gym hums on, the ceremony continuing, but the air feels different now, lighter, as if the truth has carved a space for itself. The men remain standing, their silence louder than any microphone, a testament to bonds forged in fire, unbroken by time. The gym at Westfield High exhales, its crimson and gold banners swaying faintly as if relieved by the storm's passing. The fluorescent lights hum softer now, their glow diffused across the polished floor, where folding chairs stand empty or askew, families trickling toward the exits. The air carries a lingering trace of popcorn and sweat, but the tension has dissolved, leaving a quiet reverence in its wake. Marcus Tate rises from his seat in the third row, his marine dress blues pristine despite the ordeal, his weathered face softened by a pride that runs deeper than words. The faded photo of Lena in his pocket rests lighter now, a promise fulfilled. Outside, the Ohio evening waits, the sky bruising into dusk, ready to cradle the moment father and daughter will share. The ceremony has ended, the stage bare except for a few stray programs fluttering like fallen leaves. Lena in her red gown lingers near the flagpole in the back lot, her diploma folder clutched in one hand, her cap tucked under her arm. Her classmates swirl around her, their laughter bright, their gowns half unzipped as they pose for photos or hug relatives. But Lena's eyes scan the crowd, searching for the man who's been her anchor since she was 5, since her mother's voice faded from their home. Marcus steps through the gym's double doors, his boots steady on the concrete, his posture unyielding, but his gaze warm, seeking her. The 6 men, Creed Javier, Zach Lim Horton Soto, linger near the exit, their flannel shirts and dark jackets blending with the crowd, but their presence distinct like sentinels keeping watch. They don't approach Marcus, don't need to. Their eyes meet his, brief nods passing between them, a language of loyalty forged in fire, unspoken but eternal. Creed the broadest raises a hand, not a wave, but a gesture of respect, and Marcus returns it, his nod, carrying the weight of shared history. The men fade into the lot, their silhouettes merging with the dusk, but their stand in the gym lingers a moment that reshaped the air. Marcus finds Lena by the flagpole, her smile breaking wide as she sees him. "Dad," she says, her voice catching, and she steps forward, her gown swaying. He opens his arms and she folds into them, her cheek against his uniform, the metals cool against her skin. "You made it," she whispers, her words muffled but fierce. Marcus's hand rests on her back, steady grounding. "Always will," he says, his voice low, a vow renewed. The crowd around them blurs their chatter, a distant hum, as father and daughter stand in a world of their own. "You saw what happened?" Lena asks, pulling back her eyes, searching his. She's taller now, her mother's grace in her movements, but her gaze carries Marcus's steel. He nods, his face calm but honest. "I saw you walk that stage," he says. "That's what matters." Lena's brow furrows, her hands tightening on her diploma. "They tried to move you, Dad. I saw it from the lineup. I was ready to—" She stops, her voice trembling, torn between pride and fire. Marcus places a hand on her shoulder, his touch steadying. "You didn't need to," he says. "You handled your moment. You walked with pride. That's enough." Lena's eyes glisten, but she nods, swallowing hard. She glances toward the lot where Creed's truck pulls away, its taillights glowing red. "Those men," she says, her voice softer. "They're the ones from your stories, aren't they? The ones you saved." Marcus's gaze follows hers, his face softening. "They're family," he says, simple but profound. "Men who know what loyalty means. They didn't come for me today. They came for what's right." Lena's smile returns small but real, and she tucks her diploma under her arm, standing taller. The flag above them snaps in the evening breeze, its stars catching the last light, a quiet echo of the stars Marcus once navigated by in deserts far from here. They walk toward his Ford pickup parked near the chain-link fence, its faded blue paint glowing faintly in the dusk. The lot is quieter now, families loading trunks with balloons and flowers, their voices fading into the evening. Marcus unlocks the truck, but Lena pauses at the passenger door, her fingers tracing a scratch on the handle, a mark from years of road trips and memories. "Mom would have been screaming her head off today," she says, her voice soft, a smile tugging at her lips. "She'd have made you retake every photo," Marcus replies, a grin, breaking through rare and warm. They climb in the truck's interior, warm from the sun, a cocoon of leather and old air freshener. Lena leans back, her gown pulling around her, and turns to him. "Why didn't you fight back, Dad? You just sat there." Marcus taps the steering wheel, his fingers brushing the photo in his pocket, a reflex that's carried him through a decade of loss. "Because I don't need to shout to be heard," he says, his voice slow, deliberate. "Life's given me 100 chances to react with anger, Lena. Sometimes it's justified. But silence cuts deeper, dignity lasts longer." He pauses, his eyes on the horizon where the sky bleeds purple. "Those men today, they stood because they know what I carry, what you carry. That's what people remember." Lena nods, her gaze distant, chewing on his words. "I want to be like that," she says, her voice quiet but firm. "Like you." Marcus's smile is small, almost imperceptible, but it's there, a flicker of pride. "You already are," he says. "You walk that stage with your head high, even when the world tried to pull you down. That's strength." The truck rumbles to life, its engine a low growl, and Marcus pulls out of the lot, the school fading behind them. The flagpole shrinks in the rear view, its stars still visible, a reminder of promises kept. Lena leans her head against the window, her diploma in her lap, and for a moment they're just father and daughter, bound by a love that's weathered storms. The road stretches ahead, leading them home to Pittsburgh, to a life built on quiet victories and unspoken bonds. In a nation built on second chances, Marcus Tate's story is a testament to dignity's power. It's not about revenge, not about shouting louder than the world's noise. It's about sitting still when prejudice sneers, about standing tall when loyalty calls. The gym's echo will linger in Dayton, in the hearts of those who saw 6 men rise, who saw a father's silence speak louder than any microphone. Marcus carries the photo of Lena not for strength, but for purpose, a reminder of what's worth protecting. And Lena, watching the stars emerge, carries his lesson. True strength is the quiet that shatters bias, the bond that endures when the world stops watching.